Welcome to Destination Station. As always, I'm Destin. This is my fourth entry in my Halloween special, 31 Days of Halloween. I hope you enjoy. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit that Taco Bell so you can be notified every time I upload a video. So yeah, let's just get into this review. A Nightmare on Elm Street starring Heather Langenkamp, Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, and a baby face Johnny Depp. Yeah, a lot of people forget that Johnny Depp, this was his first movie. Yeah, we'll get more into that later. And before he took on Jason Voorhees in Freddy vs. Jason. Back in 1984, when this film was released, Wes Craven created this iconic villain, this iconic horror icon that was just, that terrorized moviegoers all over the world. You had this big slasher craze that was coming about that had, you know, Michael Myers as Halloween, you had John Carpenter doing that, you had Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Tobe Hooper doing that, you had Friday the 13th coming out. It was just the big craze. But when Wes Craven created Freddy Krueger, it terrorized everybody. A lot because of the source material, because he was a child murderer. No one really realizes that. They kind of forget that because they more go into the typical teenager route and some of the dumb characters, and you know, you have your cliche bunch of characters. But in the beginning, he was a child murderer, and he was, the parents of the community took matters into their own hand and they killed him. And now he seeks out revenge and kills their children in their dreams on Elm Street. Makes Freddy Krueger stand out from all the other horror icons is that he's the most unique out of the bunch, if you would ask me. Except for like maybe Chucky, but Chucky is more on the humor side. They did get humorous with some of the sequels later on in the Nightmare on Elm Street, but if you talk about the first three, and I know the second film, Freddy's Revenge, gets a lot of backlash, but I have to say that I really enjoyed that movie. The way they handled Freddy Krueger in that movie frightened me as a kid, and even watching it now, the serious tone of it, it scared me as well. And then the third one has a good balance of humor and horror, and a lot of creativity with Heather Langenkamp coming back, and with the Dream Warriors aspect and everything. It had a bigger budget. It was a very good, tight ending to this trilogy. And then, you know, you get Freddy Krueger in the fourth film, which is like, they call it the MTV era of Freddy Krueger. I call it Cool Freddy era. He does a lot of stuff back then. That was really my entry into the Nightmare on Elm Street. Was, I think I was either 6 or 7. I was too young to watch these films, and it was on TV, or maybe my older sister, I think, rented it or something, because I don't know if they could cuss, because I remember them cussing whenever I saw this. And it's the scene in A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 where Kincaid drops the car on Freddy at the very beginning, and he says, "Take that, motherfucker," you know. And I repeated that, and my parents were in the back room, and I would just hear, "Hey," I got in a lot of trouble. They're like, "What are you watching in here?" And they turn off the TV, and they're like, "Don't say that." And I didn't know what I was saying. But that was my first entry of seeing Freddy Krueger. And then after that, growing up throughout the years, when I go to the video store, you know, Blockbuster or anything, I would always see Freddy Krueger on the display, and I would always want to pick him up just because he looked the scariest. With the makeup, the burnt face, you know, Freddy could talk. He had a more fleshed out background. It was darker. It felt like it just scared me as a kid, but I loved it for some reason, and that's really the franchise that grew me into the horror fan that I am today. Freddy Krueger was my Batman, and I say that all the time. Is that all these other kids that were into Batman and superheroes and all that kind of stuff, I was into Freddy Krueger. That was my guy. So whenever they decided to remake this movie with Jackie Earle Haley, I was like, yes, finally, my movie's coming out. I'm ready to see this. I can't wait to see it. Me and my girlfriend, which is my wife now, we went and saw it. I drug her to go see it. She's not a big horror movie nut like I am. And when I watched it, I was so let down. I was like, what is missing out of this movie? And I had to see it a second time, and I was just like, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not feeling this. I don't know if it was Jackie Earle Haley at that time, which now that I'm rewatching the movie, I'm just like, no, his performance was fine. Yes, he was too much of a smaller Freddy. His build, his frame, he was a great actor. He still is a great actor. But as Freddy Krueger, I thought it was going to be a good mix, but it wasn't. I thought maybe they could do shots to make him look taller than he was. I just felt his small frame presence on screen. I didn't really like the look of him, even though I know they were going for a more burnt victim look. Still didn't like it. Just still wasn't Freddy. It wasn't my Freddy. And the way the movie was fleshed out, it was so depressing from beginning to end. There was a couple of scenes that I did enjoy. I liked the opening diner scene. I liked near the end with the whole, you falling asleep and then waking back up and you seeing a glimpse of Freddy. I thought that was really creative. But I really think the movie where it lacked is that we just didn't know any of the characters before the movie got going. We dived straight into all these characters that are so depressed and already sleep deprived and just you don't get to know who these characters were before they became this very depressed, group of kids at this high school. And I didn't really like the way they redid Tina's death either, because that's such an iconic scene in the first Nightmare on Elm Street. The one we're talking about here in 1984 is Tina's death. It was frightening. In a Nightmare on Elm Street remake, the way they did Tina's death, it wasn't as bloody, it wasn't as frightening. And if you look at any of the behind the scenes of how Wes Craven and the crew did Tina's death in the 1984 original, how they built this whole room and they tilted it and they had to, have a cameraman follow it. It was very frightening for its time. Now, a lot of people can go back and watch 1984 A Nightmare on Elm Street and think some of the stuff is dated, and it is. I've rewatched it several times, but it still has some great shots in it. It has some very scary imagery that the remake just lacked, and I hope that if they do a remake, that it will be it'll be by a filmmaker that hasn't just got a filmography of doing music videos. And I think that's another thing that really lacked in the remake, because whenever coming to the upcoming release of the remake, I looked at the director and I saw that all he had was like some music videos, and I was like, come on, man, you got to give this movie more love than that. Give us like some type of good director. Give us Alexandra Aja or Sam Raimi or somebody that's good in the horror game. But with the remake, they had such a good cast. I mean, you had Mara Rooney in it. You had the girl that was from Harper's Island, which was growing as an actress at that time, who played Tina. You had a really good cast in this, but it just failed on so many levels. And I think the oversaturation of CGI is another thing where that remake failed too, because the original was practical effects, and if you can go practical, you always go practical. You leave CGI only at the spots that you have to use CGI, and you blend it with the practical effects. That's the way you do it. That's another thing that took me out of the movie, is a lot of the CGI, even like to the point to where Jackie Earle Haley was like, yeah, I got to wear the glove, for the review, was scraping his claws against the pipes in the boiler room, and it was so sparkly, like a sparkler, instead of it looking like a real scrape and spark. It was looking too much like a firecracker, and I was just like, man, come on, like this is just too Hollywood. It feels like a music video, just how the transitions of the shot, and with the snow and the CGI and the way it was going in and out of dreams. I was just like, yeah, this wasn't the guy to make this movie. This was a guy to make the music video for the soundtrack of the movie. Okay, enough about the remake and all that kind of stuff. Let's get into Nightmare on Elm Street 1984. Wes Craven created this villain, and it stars Heather Langenkamp. She's not the protagonist at the beginning. It's really her friend Tina, and that's who we're following at first, is Tina, and through her dreams. And you think this is the girl we're going to be following throughout the entire film. And Wes Craven likes to do this, and I love movies that do stuff like this. Like Psycho did it, where you're following the main. You think you're following the final girl through the whole movie, and then like halfway through the movie or a quarter way through the movie, the girl gets killed, and then it transitions to another protagonist. And that's what Wes Craven did here when Tina died, it was such an iconic death because you weren't expecting it. And when she's dragged across that wall, that is just one of the most scariest moments in horror movie history, in my opinion, is when she's dragged across the wall and the ceiling, and she's reaching out for help, and her boyfriend can't help, and everyone thinks that her boyfriend did it. And then when it transitions to Heather Langenkamp, she just becomes this strong, like, final girl. And I've always felt like she was like the best final girl, in my opinion, out of any final girl there ever was. I mean, I like Jamie Lee Curtis for what she was, but I feel like Heather Langenkamp was really more of a badass than Jamie Lee Curtis was in the original Halloween. You know, Jamie Lee Curtis really played it up as more of a victim. Heather Langenkamp really fought back, even though it did get a little Home Alone-ish there at the end when she's setting traps for Freddy and all that kind of stuff. And that's probably where, like, when I was a kid, I enjoyed that part of the film, where she was setting up traps. But now I kind of like, I feel like they shouldn't have done that. I feel like it's scarier, you know, with her being, like, maybe if she did something different and fought back. But setting up all the traps, I see why they went that route. But it just, to me, it just kind of takes the scariness out of Freddy. Because when he's going around the house and he's getting hit by all these traps and stuff like that, it was kind of humorous to me. That's where it became kind of funny. And I don't know. That's where I, you know, whenever I was younger and when I was walking through Blockbuster and I came across and I discovered Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. That, for some reason, that case always stood out to me because it was just Freddy's face looking, and there was like some fire in the background. His glove was right there, and he just looked so scary. And when I watched it, I felt like in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, he was much scarier. It just, certain scenes with, even like that iconic scene where he jumps out at the pool scene and he's just slicing everybody away, and, you know, and he's like, "You are all my children now," and, you know, and all that. The way Freddy looked, he was real slimy and real, just, he looked like a witch. He had like this real witch nose, and, you know, and throughout the franchise, he kind of looks a little bit faker, you know, the more humorous. Whenever they got into the more MTV era, or if they get into Freddy's Dead, where he's riding a damn broomstick like the Wicked Witch of the West, which there's so many issues with that film. Maybe I'll do a video on that later. Just they made him more this carnival clown. Like, before someone would get killed, he would just show up, say a couple of one-liners, and then they would die some humorous way. And it took all the frightening out of Freddy. You know, even a lot of people think that Stephen King stole the idea of Freddy Krueger with Pennywise, with the way he, you know, like, seeks, you know, fear on the children before he feeds on them, and kind of took like certain, you know, plot details from Wes Craven. And, you know, I can see the similarities, but they are kind of enough far apart, because, you know, every idea comes from another idea. I mean, you could say that Friday the 13th was taken from Halloween or something else. I mean, a mass killer is a mass killer. How much more different can you get, especially if they're walking and catching the person that's running? Even though I do love those franchises. And that's really what I think that, like, the top 3 horror icons is Freddy, Jason, and Michael. And not really in that order, but, you know, those are the 3 main horror icons in my opinion. With A Nightmare on Elm Street, John Saxon's character with his daughter, Heather Langenkamp, with Nancy. Nancy was just this great final girl, I thought. And I thought she just played it up so well. And I thought she could be utilized a little bit better in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, especially with her death and with her father's death as well. But John Saxon and her character was so great. Near the end, whenever Nancy is putting up these traps with Freddy, and you come to find out that her mother puts the bars on the windows, and you know, it made that more claustrophobic feel to where her father couldn't get to her. And it was just so well made. There are a couple of things I would have changed about that ending. That's the only flaw I can find about Nightmare on Elm Street 1984 is the last climax of the movie is just a little bit too humorous, especially with that final shot whenever she comes out in the sunshine and her mom's okay and everybody's fine, and it feels like it's just one big dream. And then she gets in the car with Johnny Depp and her friends that died earlier in the film, and everything's okay, and the drop top comes down, and it looks like Freddy's sweater, and then you hear the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, and you see the little girls jump roping, and then it cuts to the mom sitting there just waving bye, and then you see Freddy comes through the damn window, this small ass little window, and drag her mom. It just looked like a dummy. It looked too fake, and that's what I'm talking about. Like that's the only thing. It left us off with not the greatest note. And I always say in a horror movie, you got to leave off on the final note. You got to make moviegoers leave that theater, leave that experience wanting more, which they did. You know, and they made sequels, and you know, and I'm glad they did. I just wish they would have stuck with the tone of Freddy in the first 3 films, especially the first 2. Even though I do like Dream Warriors, I do have my flaws with that movie too. I had my issues. I thought it went too much on the comedic route, but that was really the entry level until they decided to really make him funny and cool Freddy again. And with A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, a lot of people don't like that movie because it has some homosexual undertones and all that kind of stuff. And when I was younger, I didn't really notice that. And maybe that's, you know, but you know, rewatching it, I see what everybody's talking about, and you know, they've even went on the record of saying there was some you know, some subtle things here and there that they meant to put in the film. But you know, overall, I'm just talking about Freddy and the way the scenes, you know, took place in that film. I just really thought the second film got the tone of Freddy right, and that's what I want to see if they ever make a remake. And you know, since we're talking about a remake, and they've been up and down with, are they going to make another one with the release of Halloween 2018, and you know, and they're bringing back all these horror icons. Slashers is becoming the craze again. We're putting the Exorcist stuff, the paranormal stuff. We're you know, Conjuring. You know, let's lay that stuff to rest for a little bit, because I'm kind of tired of it. I'm ready to go back and revisit some of these slashers, but I want it done right. And when it comes to A Nightmare on Elm Street, it's going to be the hardest one to do right, because first you got to find a great director, and secondly you got to find a great script, and third you have to find the perfect Freddy. Jackie Earle Haley was okay. Wasn't my Freddy, not what I would like to see. I thought he was too short for the role. They got to do more practical effects instead of CGI that kind of takes you out of it. But if you want to know my opinion of who I would think would make the best Freddy, and here it comes. And I want to know your guys' opinion too in the comment section below. You know, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. But I want to have a full-on conversation, and maybe I'll do a live Q&A, and you know, maybe a deep dive into the whole franchise of A Nightmare on Elm Street, upcoming to Halloween this October 31st. Sorry, I can't speak. Is who do y'all think that would be the perfect casting as Freddy? I know they talked about Kevin Bacon. I know at one point someone said about Billy Bob Thornton, and I thought that would have been a great, I don't know about now, but I think that back then that would have been great. But we do need somebody a little bit younger that can carry on this franchise. Kevin Bacon would be great too, but he's up there in age now. All these actors are up there in age, so we need someone that's younger that can carry on 2, 3, 4, 5 sequels, because if we get someone that's too old, that's Robert Englund. We would love to have Robert Englund back, but he's already put on record that, you know, he can't do another one. He doesn't, you know, it takes hours upon hours to put on the makeup and get ready for the role and all that kind of stuff. You know, you need someone that's got a little bit more energy and that's a little bit younger and that can take on this franchise. And if you want to know who I think that would be a perfect casting, is my boy Walton Goggins. Walton Goggins from Vice Principals. He was on Justified. He's on Django Unchained. He was on The Hateful Eight and some Quentin Tarantino movies. He played the sheriff in that. His presence, he can do comedy and blend it with sadistic asshole. Just like, he can be villainous, he can be serious, and I think he has that look. Like the way that Freddy, like his stance, his posture, They even said like in the original 1984, the way that Robert Englund took on the role, he used the glove as like almost like a gun holster or something. Like he would do like a little slant where it's like it's weighing him down. And if you ever watch some of like you know, if you ever watched Vice Principals with him and Danny McBride, and showed that, you know, him, the way he walked, he was just kind of like, he just has that whole posture and that mannerism. I think he would just kill it as Freddy, no pun intended. And I just really think that he can blend that comedy and horror perfectly, and to where it's not too comedic, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to go too comedy to where they, like they did with the sequels, like he was like this carnival show host and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So guys, if you're looking for a good slasher horror movie for this year, for 2019 Halloween, you need to check out Wes Craven's The Nightmare on Elm Street, the original. And I would say even followed up with Freddy's Revenge and Dream Warriors 1 and 2. 1, 2, and 3. Watch those 3. The ones after that, you can skip by. I do like Wes Craven's New Nightmare. That, I'll get into another video about that. And I'll get into another video about why I think Walton Goggins would play an excellent Freddy Krueger. I'm going to do a deep dive into that, which I have kind of touched on it here. And so yeah, guys, if you're looking for a good horror movie for this Halloween season, check out Wes Craven's The Nightmare on Elm Street. The original. If I had to rate this movie, it's not a masterpiece. I'm not going to give it a masterpiece, even though it is one of my favorites. I'm going to give it an A-. I'm going to give a Nightmare on Elm Street an A-. Like I said, there's some flaws near the end that kind of takes me out as a horror movie goer. And if you asked me when I was younger, it would have been a masterpiece, A+. Well, it is a masterpiece. It is. Just because it's an A-, I'm just saying it's not a perfect film. That's what I meant to say. It's not a perfect film, but it is a masterpiece for a horror movie. What'd you think about A Nightmare on Elm Street 1984? How does it live up to the remake? What do you want to see if they do another remake? I know it's in talks up and down. I hope we do get it. And who would you like to see play the next Freddy Krueger? And don't say Kevin Bacon, because everyone says that now, and because that's what was said back in the day. And yes, that would have been cool 5, 6, 7 years ago, but we're here now. I think he's too old. Pick somebody different. I want to see some unique answers down in the comment section below so we can have a conversation. So yeah, guys, as always, thank you for watching Destination Station. As always, I'm Destin. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit that Taco Bell so you can be notified every time I upload a video, and be looking out for my Joker review. It's coming up very shortly, among others, up to the Halloween season. So yeah, guys, thank you for watching. See you on the next one. That was very cheesy. I won't do that again. Peace.